Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast College Show. We are into week one. We have had week 0 is in the books. Let's start off. Welcome, Adam, to the college show. Obviously, me and Alex kicked it off last week with the start of it, but Adam was away because he wasn't very well. So welcome to the college show. Adam, I know the viewers know you quite well from the betting show, from the Tuesday show, but do you want to let them into why you're on here and your how you've got into college football?
I'm on here because I know absolutely nothing about college football. That's the reason that Andrew has made me come on here, just to completely make me look like an absolute plank. So this should be fun. I've not really watched a lot apart from the last couple of years, and I'm going to get taught by two people who actually know what they're talking. Well, one person. That one over there knows. This one over here, I'm not so sure. But so it's so it should be fun.
Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting to get you on. Obviously, you've been following the college game for a sort of a different reason to others. You like to follow it to find out who the next lot of players going into the draft are. So you've got a fairly decent understanding of some of the offensive players and some of those guys. I know last year I picked the games for you and you watched them. Whereas Alex has returned from Dublin. How was it? Did you enjoy it? How was the atmosphere? Went over there to watch FSU versus Georgia Tech. Tell me all about it, mate.
I've got to say, that was probably one of the best footballing days I've ever had, I'd say. And I've been to a lot of games. I've been to about 20 odd or more NFL games in London. But that day in Dublin was one of the best days I've had. It's very interesting. I got into Dublin ridiculously early, and like a 6 o'clock flight out of Bristol. Arrived in Dublin about 8 o'clock in the morning when it's all dead and quiet, and then just gradually you see the odd FSU shirt pop up, the odd Georgia Tech bit here, and then by mid-morning it was just completely swarming with fans, almost completely all Florida State fans. It was they had taken over Dublin, despite it being a Georgia Tech home game. It was clear they brought about 30,000 people over, I think, and it was mad. But there is an absolutely brilliant atmosphere. All the fans were hyped up, but they're all willing to talk, have a chat. We interviewed a few different fans. There's one guy who managed to predict the score absolutely spot on when he said 24-21 Georgia Tech with a fourth quarter field goal to win it. So shout out to Clay, I think his name was. And we had a chat with the Georgia Tech president, Angel Cabrera. He was a lovely bloke. And he was quite excited for his team to be spreading their brand internationally. We got to experience college game day, which is a bit of a thing. The street that was on was absolutely packed by the time it started. Like hours before the start of the show, there was thousands of fans there with their signs up. Most of them Florida State fans, having something not very nice to say about Kirk Herbstreit because of obviously his views on Florida State, and every time he appeared, just boos just echoing around. And we were lucky enough to be granted backstage access to game day as well. They only let one of us in though, so Gareth was the lucky one who got to go in and got to stand about 6 feet away from Nick Saban and Pat McAfee. And
I think you should have gone in. You're on our college show. You should have been the face of that. You should know, Gareth. You stick behind the scenes.
I was just stood on the sidelines like a little kid, pressing my face up, going, I can't see you. But no, it was really good. And then when we got in the stadium itself, it was a lovely stadium actually. It was the first time I've ever been to the Aviva. It's absolutely brilliant stadium. We got to go down on the sideline and see the players warming up, which was great. And then by kickoff time again, it was just rammed with Florida State. There were Georgia Tech fans. There's some Georgia Tech fans sat behind me. I had a nice little bit of a chat with, but for the majority of the match, you just heard the war chant echoing around the stadium and the fans in the chop.
Yeah, I've always said I think college game day atmospheres are a lot more better and a lot more exciting than the NFL. I don't know what it is about them, but if you're ever around them, the tailgating, the whole day, it just seems like there's more excitement and buzz about these games.
Yeah,
is that better than the NFL in London, or better than the NFL just in general?
That's better than anything in general. I mean, I was talking to Gareth about it when we were walking to the stadium, and when the London games they feel more like a celebration of football. Everyone comes in their different jerseys and things. Everyone's teams there, and everyone's there because they love football. They just want to watch a football match. This was because the majority of fans there was lots of Irish fans, lots of like UK, some European fans, quite a few Germans. There's always a few Germans that turn up to the NFL games, but the majority were US fans from like diehard Florida State or Georgia Tech fans with all their gear, and they were just there loving it. And because of it was clearly two sets of fans there for that game, rooting for their team to win, it just had that bit more of a buzz. It never reached a point of like real hostility between the fans. There was a bit of like ribbing each other and stuff like that, but there's more of a sense this is two sides going to war sort of thing for their teams. Well, and then you get all the pomp and circumstance of the marching bands and the chilies, and get all that around it as well, which just adds a bit of extra flavour to it.
You've already mentioned the game was 24-21 to Georgia Tech. Week 0 hasn't disappointed. It's led us with an upset, which brings me on to a question for Adam, which he might see, he can give us his opinion on it. Now, prior to the season starting, all the teams are given a ranking. Obviously, Florida State were ranked 10th and Georgia Tech were unranked. Now, I personally not sure with the turnover of players every single year how much you can rank teams. Adam, now knowing what's just happened, do you think preseason rankings should be a thing for college football?
Clearly not, based on what's just happened. I mean, I know a lot of people have come out and said it was an upset, haven't they? You know, they were quite surprised by the outcome of it. But I mean, it does kind of, you know, we've got some games that we're going to go through later and stuff like that. And I was just sort of like going through some of these. And when you look at the teams and stuff like that, there's a lot of change on a lot of these teams. And so it's very difficult in my mind to come out and go, that team is definitely should be ranked at that specific number when half the team isn't there anymore. Now, obviously, that doesn't happen with every team. Ohio State have brought a lot of them back, haven't they, this year? So, you know, you could argue that they could be fairly ranked because them players, you've got some history of that. But yeah, it does feel a little bit strange that is the way that they do it for someone who, you know, isn't used to it. It does seem a little bit odd, but I assume it's just a historical thing that they've always done.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the. I'm sorry.
Go on.
One of the quirks of college football is a lot of it is decided on opinion, whether it's the AP rankings from the Associated Press. So that's media ranking what the best teams are, and then you've got the college football player committee. So, like we saw what happened with Florida State happened last year because they didn't have their starting quarterback. The committee's opinion was they wouldn't be good enough to compete, and it just seems a bit mad when you first come into it that actually you could either be ranked really high or not, or make it into the playoffs because some bunch of people think you're all right or not. Something.
Yeah.
Alex, I think you tipped FSU to be the winners of their division. You called Mike Norvell the transfer portal king. I think you dubbed him last week. Obviously, he brought in DJU at quarterback, who looked like he struggled quite a bit. But I've just looked a little bit deeper into it. Mike Norvell is 29-9 as an FSU with Jordan Travis starter, and 2-9 now with him without him starting as the quarterback for them. What does this mean for FSU now? Do you think that they went from 65% chance of qualifying for the playoffs to now I think it's 15%, 13%, something like that chance to qualify with one loss in a division that could be a little bit open for them? Do you think this is one and done for them, or do you think there is a chance of FSU getting back into this division?
I think they're fortunate that this year is the first year of the expanded playoff, which gives them a bit of a lifeline. I mean, but going 0-1 at the start of the season gives the opportunity for teams like Clemson and Miami just to jump in ahead of you straight away and get that advantage. I think there's still a fair chance that they could still come out on top. I don't think any of the teams in the ACC this season are going to go undefeated. So I think it's going to lead for an interesting season. I think it'll be quite close come the end of it. But I think it's going to be a 3-horse race between Florida State will still be in the mix, I think, and then Clemson and Miami will be the top challengers there.
I suppose it's just whether you trust Mario Cristobal not to make any stupid mistakes when he doesn't need to, like kneel the ball and run the game out instead of losing for Miami. Let's jump straight into some of the upcoming games. Adam, I'll come to you first. The first game we're going to look at is Georgia versus Clemson. What's your thirst for? So I did this for you last season. I picked you some games. You watched the games, and then you kind of give me a bit of feedback on the players you like. This is a big game. Obviously, Georgia narrowly missed out on the playoffs last year for their three-peat. And Clemson, a forgotten team. They used to be very, very dominant. They've always had 5-star recruits. They've always been very, very talented. Both are ranked. Adam, what's your first initial thoughts on this game?
Well, my first one is obviously I've seen a little bit of tape from both of the teams, and it just, to me, I was really trying to find where Clemson are better than Georgia in any specific area, and it feels like there's not many places where they are, to be honest. And so, I mean, the over-under on it is 13.5, which, it just kind of makes you feel very much like, obviously, Georgia are favourites to win this one. It feels like, I remember seeing, you see some of these teams of different, even if they're playing for different teams, you sort of see some of them and see how they perform, some of these players. To me, I'd argue that Carson Beck is the better quarterback in this matchup. I'd probably come out and say that their wide receiver core is a little bit better than what Clemson's are. They've got a bit more experience, I'd say. So I think that they will probably do more. The one thing that is probably the most sort of like where I think it will be won or lost, it is I really think it's going to be about the O-line of Georgia going up against the D-line of Clemson, and that's where it feels like that will be quite an exciting matchup to watch. And then also, and I know it sounds really weird because obviously it's going to be like wide receivers up against corners and that sort of thing as well, but it does feel like them sort of matchups are where it's going to be won and lost. If you want me to, I don't know if you want me to do a prediction or whatever, but I just kind of, to me, I feel very much like Georgia are going to be this team that are, they're one of the favourites to win the whole thing, aren't they? They're clearly a very good side, and that to me, I just think they've got more than what Clemson have got at the moment. Really looking forward to see how Trevor Etienne does.
Yeah, Alex, this game I wanted to talk about first up because I think it's a really interesting one because, as I said, I think a lot of people have forgot about Clemson. We've just mentioned that FSU have lost. They now know what position they're in. Dabo Swinney's a very, very talented head coach. Yeah, he doesn't agree with the transfer portal, but as I said, this team always has 5-star recruits, always has players in the NFL draft every single year. It only takes them to have one cycle where they have 5 or 6 guys come in of a talent that they've had before to be starters. Do you think this game is going to be a blowout that everybody thinks, or do you think Clemson can put up a fight in this game?
I don't think it will be a complete blowout. I mean, Georgia are 13.5-point favourites coming into it, so it's going to be tough for them to keep pace with them. And as Adam was saying, Carson Beck is probably a better quarterback than Cade Klubnick. He's coming off one of the best ever seasons for a Georgia quarterback, and he put up ridiculous numbers. Like he had nearly 4,000 yards passing and 24 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions. They've lost some key players on offense. Obviously, Brock Bowers and Lad McConkey have gone to the NFL now, but they replaced them. They brought in players like London Humphreys and Colby Young, and that to replace those skill position players. And Beck is going to come in confident. He knows how to run this offense, and he knows how to be efficient in it. He's going to have to deal with the Clemson defense, which I think that's their strongest side generally. Is their defensive side. I mean, they run quite like a blitz heavy sort of scheme, so they're going to try and get pressure in his face. But I don't think they'll have quite enough to throw them enough off balance, because I think Georgia is too much of a winning machine at the moment. They were unlucky to lose in the playoff and the championship game last season, and I think they're going to be out knowing that they're the top team. They're going to come in with a lot of confidence, and they're going to not steamroll, but I think they should win quite comfortably.
I think Clemson might put up a bit more of a fight than people are saying. It obviously brought Barrett Carr back. The O-line is very, very good. Cade Klubnick, although he struggled quite a bit at the start of last year, he ended the season really, really strong, having good wins against Notre Dame and North Carolina, and then obviously in the bowl game as well against Kentucky. So I think they're not going to beat Georgia, I don't think, but I think they're going to put up a bit more of a fight than everybody else is saying. And Carson Beck, there's a fair shout, Adam, that he is the best quarterback in college right now. Is that a fair assessment? Where do you have him ranked among some of the guys that you've had your eye on for the draft next year?
I think it's probably fair to say that he is the best at the moment, but going into this season, it would probably be a bit unfair to go anywhere else at the moment. It just kind of feels like he is very much not the finished article, but against all the others, he's kind of in that position where it's almost like if he just keeps improving the way that he has, that he should continue and do well there. We'll be talking about another quarterback in a minute, which I personally like. But I think that Beck has kind of, to me, I mean, based on paper with all the names that are there, it feels like he's got the best all-round offense there at the moment amongst these teams that we're talking about, to be able to go and push on and really do well. So, yeah, I think it would be a bit unfair if we didn't have him as the best one at the moment. But, we shall see what happens on Saturday. So,
well, I know it's not Quinn Ewers that you're talking about, because we haven't got Texas to talk about, but we'll move on to the next game. It's Notre Dame against Texas A&M. I think this is a really interesting matchup, because I think Notre Dame have a chance at going unbeaten this season, but they have a very, very tough game in Texas A&M first up. I was going to come to Alex first for this one, because I don't want to, Adam's obviously itching to talk about someone on Texas A&M's team. So we will go with Alex. Alex, what's your thoughts on this game? Do you think Notre Dame are all they're hyped up to be? Brought in Riley Leonard. I really, really liked him at Duke. Can they go unbeaten? Can they do it?
Hopefully not, because obviously as a USC fan, I don't like Notre Dame very much, so I don't want them to win this match. But yeah, they're coming into the season quite strong. It's third year for head coach Marcus Freeman, and although I think he's trying to ignore the hype, it seems to be a tradition of Notre Dame head coaches doing very well in their third year. I think Brian Kelly that is his national championship year when they were playing for the national championship in the third season. So there's this weight of expectation on him there. I think they've done well in bringing Riley Leonard in from Duke. He was pretty solid last season. He finished injured though, didn't I? think he's coming off injury.
Well, I thought he was going to go into the draft process. Yeah, I think his injury meant it dropped him down slightly, so he's gone back for the year. And why not? I think he's got the talent there.
Yeah, but I think that gives him an upgrade at quarterback over Sam Hartman from last year. I think he's more accurate, and I think they're going to maybe shift their focus from last year. It was very much pounding it between the tackles, very much relying on the running game. This might open it up for a bit more airborne offensive for them. Interestingly, they're going to be quite tricky to keep him safe though, because they're starting offensive line. I think all 5 starters only have a combined 6 starts between them, so it's quite a raw, quite a new O-line for him to be starting behind. So there may be some issues there, especially when coming up against Texas A&M when they have a very strong defensive line, and then they've just brought in edge rusher Nick Skoughton from Purdue, who was, I think he was the Big Ten leader in sacks last year. I think about 10 sacks or so, so he's going to be a problem for them to try and keep quiet during that game. Texas A&M is starting they've got new head coach in, so Mike Elko, so there's going to be a bit of adjustment period there. But I think their offense is going to be quite strong. Although, again, they had issues with their offensive line last year as well. They were ranked like 94th in pass blocking nationally and 91st in run blocking. So they got some work to do to get that offense going as well. But yeah, I think it's going to be a tough match for both sides. I think a lot of people predict it to be quite a low-scoring game, so it could be quite an attritional sort of battle in the trenches sort of one. But I think, and I hope, the Aggies come out on top, but not by too much. I think this is going to be a closer game than the previous game we just talked about. But yeah, it's going to be tough. Notre Dame are going into College Station, which is notorious for being one of the toughest environments going. The stadium hold like 100,000 fans or something. That's going to be roaring. So yeah, it's going to be tough start for the Irish. I hope they lose. Come on, Aggies.
I think there's a lot of people going to be rooting for them to lose. I don't know what your perception of them is, Adam, being a newbie to it, but I've always found that this is a team that no one likes. Everyone wants them to lose. I mean, maybe it's probably why they're an independent.
Someone must like them, surely. They have fans, don't they?
Their own fans. A lot of people follow the other teams and go, oh, yeah, I quite like that team from that conference, that team from that conference. But no one ever goes, oh, yeah, I really want Notre Dame to do well. Is your perception of them the same, or you haven't really heard too much about them? Or
No, not really. I haven't really heard that much about them, really. I don't really know too much. All I know when it comes to this game is that they've not got Joe Alt anymore, and that's going to be a big problem, I would have thought, at left tackle. So that's a real issue, I would have thought, for them. I think obviously they've brought in a new one, but that's, I mean, he's such a good O-lineman that you just feel like at that position it's so important as well that's going to be difficult. I quite like their secondary. I thought Benjamin Morrison and Xavier Watts, I thought they looked pretty good and that they'll do all right for them. I know you're a big fan of Riley Leonard. I'm not really seeing it quite so much, but I'm not gonna take it away from you. But yeah, I agree with Alex in the fact I think it's going to be a very defensive game. I think that's what this is going to be like.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to Texas's offense against Notre Dame's defense. I think that's where the big battle is going to be, and that big battle is going to come from the Texas A&M quarterback, isn't it, Adam? Do you want to tell us a bit more about him and why you're so hot on him?
Yeah, I really like Connor Eggman. I think he did really, really well last year before he got the foot injury. And, he was on. What I like about him is that, I mean, he does have a little bit. He can run. He's not complete pocket passer, and that's it. But he is predominantly a bit more pocket passer. He completed 69% of his passes. So, I mean, that's a really good pass completion rate as well. But like I say, he got injured only in the fourth game. So I just think he's a very efficient thrower of the ball, and I think that he'll do really well. If he keeps on doing better and better, then I think he will be one of the top guys coming into the draft next year. I think Texas A&M have got a lot of promise this year. I think it's like under their new head coach, Mike Elko. Everything I've seen of Mike Elko, it's very much that the defense. He never has a bad defense. He's very good at that. And he will do pretty well there. I personally, not just Connor Weigman is the one that I, looking forward to seeing. Really looking forward to seeing Nick Scarton, the defensive end. I think that he's come over from Purdue. I think that he will do really well for them. And it's going to be a very defensive game. I mean, the over/under is 46.5, which even I can work out that feels pretty low in a college game. So I think it is going to be very defensive. I like Texas A&M for it because I think Elko will get that defense going, not amazing, but okay, pretty quickly, and then I just prefer Wiegman over Riley Leonard. So I think having that quarterback as well, I think will do a bit more. So I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be defensive, but be a good game.
So first game, Georgia Clemson. We all went Georgia for the win. For this second game, I'm going to go Notre Dame. Adam, you're going Texas A&M. Is that correct? Alex, take off the bias cap. Who's winning this game?
Even coming at it from a neutral perspective, I think that the Aggies will just have the edge. So I'll go for A&M.
We're split. First time we haven't all agreed. Now we move on to the final game. It is USC versus LSU. Two massive names in college football. I'd say one of them's got a bit more pressure on them than the other. I think USC have got a lot of pressure on them this year. I think Lincoln Riley is in a bit of a hot seat situation despite his contract. I think people are going to start saying things there. Adam, we'll come to you first because we'll leave. You can see the Trojan top's on. He's ready. He's raring. LSU, a team that you've kind of watched a lot of, the team that one of the first teams you kind of got to know when you first started watching college football. Adam, you haven't got a team yet. LSU were one of them, weren't they? That you were and ahhing to be a fan of.
Yeah, see, now LSU, I suppose, have always been the team that I've seen bits of. I remember when I first started watching, there was Burrow and Chase, and then obviously last year you had Daniels and the two wide receivers there. And it kind of, in that respect, I suppose, I've always thought of them as kind of a team that has quite aggressive offenses and good players. They go for good players like that. I think really for LSU this year, I would argue it's going to be tough to emulate what they've lost. Jaden Daniels has gone. They've lost Brian Thomas. They've lost Malik Neighbors. I mean, how do you replace these sort of guys? This is kind of the exact reason as to why you can question why ranking happens, I would argue, because it's like, you lose these three guys on the offense. That's really tough to be able to replace. I know that they have brought in a couple of guys, but even still, it's going to be very, very difficult, I would have thought. They've come out and said that they want to be more balanced this year. I think the idea is to have a bit of a run game. I quite like the look of Caleb Jackson. I saw a few video clips of him. I thought he looked really good as the running back. I know they got Josh Williams as well. So I think that's probably they're going to go for that a little bit more. The quarterback that they've got in, Garrett Neismeier, he had a really good game against Wisconsin in the bowl last year, I noticed. Yeah, I thought that he did really well. So I think they have hope. In this specific game, though, here's a stat for you. LSU haven't won a season opener since 2019. So, happy days for you. It's history's on your side in that respect. So,
So that's back. USC haven't lost an opener since 2016.
There you go. Right. We can forget the rest of this because we know what's going to happen, don't we? So get your money on.
With stats like that, Adam's money will definitely be on. He loves a trend. He loves that when it comes to betting. But
I think I think it's going to be tough for them to be able to be as explosive and as good as what they were last year.
Yeah. Segueing into Alex, obviously there's not a lot of expectation on LSU because of those players that Adam's mentioned have gone. Whereas USC, I think there's a lot on the line for them, despite the fact they lost. They lost their best player. They lost essentially the face of the team. What's the outlook for you and this game for USC?
Well, obviously they're going to steamroll it and win 56-0. But
Harold Perkins might have something to say about that.
Yeah. I'm quite glad it's in a neutral site to begin with because they're playing in Las Vegas at Legion Stadium. I think that if they were going into Baton Rouge, I think that would be a really tough start. Like you say, we've lost some of the linchpins of our offense. Obviously, Caleb Williams is with the Bears now. Marshall and Lloyd was a solid running back, and not the ground game ran through him. and top receivers. They weren't the best receivers in the nation in terms of college football, but they were good, solid receivers in Brendan Rice and Taj Washington, who all left for the draft as well. We've got Miller Moss stepping up. He's been named starter now. The hero of the Holiday Bowl, 6 touchdowns against Louisville, where he just stepped in when Caleb Williams sat out and put in a phenomenal performance. He's been a bit iffy through the spring game and spring training, but he's secured the starting spot. I think he's going to be solid. Obviously not as exciting and dynamic as Williams was. And we've got 1 or 2 still quite exciting players on offense. We saw flashes from Zachariah Branch last year, mainly as a kick returner, punt returner. He has the ability to take it to the house on any kick he receives. But I think he's going to have a bit of a breakout year this year. They're going to use him a bit more. He's going to put up the yards. He's backed up by Jacoby Lane, who's returning. And then they've got players like Juice Robinson, who didn't contribute much last year, but is in line for a bigger role. And they've got players like Mackay Lemon, who's quite a big-bodied receiver, who they might need as well. But I think the offense will be right. You mentioned a bit before about Riley Leonard being on a bit of a hot seat. Not Riley Leonard. Lincoln Riley, because the expectation for USC is playoffs. They lost the playoff game against Tulane, and they didn't make the playoffs at all last year because they completely collapsed down the stretch. Ryan is very good at developing quarterbacks, so I have no doubt that he'll put Moss in a very good position to succeed. He can produce Heisman winners, but he can't get to that point where he can win a playoff game. And I don't think if he doesn't get into this expanded playoffs and win a playoff game, then I think his seat's going to be very, very hot. But to start the season, I'm not going to say confident that they're going to win. I think this game's going to be very much a shootout, though, because both LSU and USC, their defenses last year were useless. They both fired their defensive coordinators. They've got new ones in. So USC under Alex Grinch last year were just giving up big plays consistently when having to chase 40, 45 points on other teams each game. I think there's a chance that it could be the same this game. I'm hoping that the defense is going to be a bit better under Tom Lynn, who's coming from UCLA. They've revamped the secondary. They brought in a lot of players.
A load on defense. Well, you had to, didn't you? It was your big issue.
I had to. They were crap. But they brought in a lot. They cut from Oregon State. They got safety Keely Arnold, and cornerback Carlos Nicholson from Missouri, and they got Ramsey from UCLA as well. So they're going to come in and be instant starters. So hopefully they'll give a bit more strength in the secondary, and reduce the amount of big plays that they're giving up. But the same could be said for LSU, because I think they were giving up tons of points last year and getting pretty shredded on defense. So, but they've got in, who's their DC now? I've completely forgotten who they brought in now. Someone else, because the last bloke was crap. But Blake Baker, that was it, from Missouri. He's come in. He replaced Matt House, who wasn't. I think he tried to overcomplicate things on defense. I think LSU are going to try and strip things back a bit, make it a bit more simpler, and just try and again reduce those big plays. But I predict a reasonably high scoring game with USC coming out on top.
Yeah, you briefly mentioned Miller Moss there. Obviously, he's been named the starter. There was a bit of a competition in spring training with Mava as well. Now, I'm hearing a lot of things from people around USC that are saying when they had Caleb Williams, he kind of went off-piste quite a lot. So, because he was good enough. He was good enough to go, it's not there, I'll do my own thing. And when you've got such an extremely talented offensive mind like Lincoln Riley, a lot of people are saying maybe Miller Moss suits Lincoln Riley better, and he'll get more out of him because he's going to just listen to what the play is, listen to what he's being told, and then deliver that. So there's a chance he might actually be better for the scheme than what Caleb Williams was, but Caleb Williams obviously was just talented enough to do everything himself. Do you think that there's an area of truth in this, or do you think Miller Moss might struggle and we might see Maver come in during the season?
I think quite possibly there might be a grain of truth in that. Yes, Williams was partial to a hero play and would sometimes extend the plays as they look like they're breaking down, ignore the easy check down, and then chuck it downfield. Miller Moss showed that he's got it in that Holiday Bowl game. He's been at USC for quite a while as well. He's quite ingrained in that structure as well. So he's probably, I can't remember how many years, he's been there for several years, and he's been there the entire time that Lincoln Riley's been there. So he's probably absorbed his style, his structure, the way he likes to instruct an offense. The proof's going to be in the pudding. I don't think we're going to see it until we get a few games in and we can see. I think he's still going to put up fairly big numbers, stats-wise, but that might, like you say, that might come from a more structured style of play. He might start seasons more of a game manager sort of role than Cade, which was just complete opposite of Williams. So yeah, he and I think that would be good to start off with, and to get that confidence in, get that sense of structure, just for him to really settle in and to bed down as a starter. But I've also heard rumours as well that if he struggles, they might look to Jordan Maver, because he had quite good reports coming out as well, and there was some sort of hint at maybe a bit of a quarterback controversy there, but obviously Moss has come out on top there. But we'll see. I think, like you say, he'll be more of an instructor sort of quarterback. But if that works, then that's great. If it doesn't, then we'll have to look at other options.
Well, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks move this season because the people say scheme fits better. They're saying we mentioned Dylan Gabriel, the scheme fits better for him at Oregon. Will Howard, the scheme fits better for him at Ohio. So Miller Moss, the scheme fits better for him, might be a thing as well. Adam, who you got for winning this game?
Well, the interesting thing that I have noted is that the money has come in for USC a little bit. So when the numbers, the odds first came out, the plus minus was a touchdown. It's now 4.5. So it feels like everyone has put their money on USC. It's interesting that USC is also the plus, because LSU are favourite to win this. To me, it just seems like there's been a massive amount of change on that offense of LSU. So I think that they'll struggle in that result. I know there's been change for USC as well, but it just feels like it's a lot when it comes to LSU to be able to make up that difference. Both teams' defenses were terrible last year, so it's really going to be about who's going to have the most improvement on that from the new DCs, I think. But history does sort of go to USC, so therefore I will be saying them.
That's two wins for USC, and I think I'm going to go LSU. I think there's more talent on the team across the board. Their defense, I think, is better than USC's, which I think might just do it. And the O-line for LSU, they've got some big names on that O-line. So I think there's just an area of talent from an SEC team going against what was a Pac-12 team. We can kind of still say the style is still the same. So I'm going to go LSU for that one. Alex, do I need to ask you?
Yeah, so I'm going to go for USC, but not by much in the pretty high. Like, it's going to be 42-38 USC.
Now, I've got two more quick topics before we sign out. We'll go with the first one. Is there any other games this week that you guys have got your eye on? Is there any other teams that you're looking out for? Alex, is there anything that you're going, I'm going to watch that game because I really want to see this player play this week? Or I really like that matchup. It's going to be interesting. Maybe it's two lower down teams. Is there anything you like?
Yeah, I think the first one that's sprung out to me is Miami, Florida. Miami against Florida, not Miami, Florida. Mainly because I want to watch Cam Ward and see how he does as new quarterback in Miami. Like we touched upon last week, he opted to stay in college, not enter the draft, and have an extra season with the Hurricanes. And I think that he's got the skill set to do quite well. And I would like to see him in a new environment. I watched him quite a bit at Washington State last season. He was quite up and down at times. There's some real great flashes, and there's other times when there was some questionable decision making in play. But I'd like to see how he gets on there. And I think Miami should probably win that quite comfortably. Florida aren't the team, and I think their head coach is probably his favourite to be the first one out this season. So yeah, whilst it might not be the most competitive game, that piques my interest mainly for Cam Ward and seeing how he gets on.
Yeah, you beat me to it there. I think if obviously Billy Napier gets fired from the Gators, that's a big program to go and take on and turn it back around to the dominant force that it once was. Adam, is there any games that you like the look of this week? I know we're putting you on the spot a little bit here and you may not know them all, but is there someone that you like the look of?
I think it's more there's a couple of teams that I think would be interesting. I mean, Alabama, I think will be really interesting without Nick Saban, obviously, to see what happens there. They're going up against West Kentucky. So that's one that would be worth looking at. Obviously, your Ohio State boys, we always want to look out for them and see how they're doing.
If they don't win their first game by low.
Yeah.
It's Akron.
And then the only other one really is obviously Colorado, and the chaos that is going on around there.
Yeah, I think they've got a nice steady first one. It's their second game where the season really starts for them against I think. Now the last one before we go, Adam, who are you going to support this year? Where's your feelers at? What's your thoughts?
I have no feelers anywhere. Like I say, I mean, LSU is the team that I kind of sort of semi-liked from the past and what they've done. I don't really have any particular team or I suppose I should probably go Texas A&M and just stick with Bigman as my quarterback and go down that route. Maybe that's the way forward.
Maybe. So you're going to be following them. Well, that's all we've got time for, guys. Thanks for joining me, and fingers crossed we've gone through those games. Hopefully I've got more winners than you guys. I like to be the winner of lots of stuff. We'll be back next week, same time, to go through some of the highlights of week 1 and then have a look at 3 more games and upcoming for week 2. But till then, guys, keep it with the franchise tag and see you very soon.